Hello, my name is Anthony Demont Smith, and I am in DBA 605 Organizational Development Theories and Trends. Today I will be discussing with you about an organizational intervention. All right, so to start off, we're going to start off with an introduction. So, what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to talk about it's an actual company, but I've changed the name to protect the innocent. So, the name of the organization I'm going to call is XYZ Manufacturing. So, we'll be discussing today an intervention that was done at XYZ Manufacturing. So, what we'll discuss is the company background, basically, and the organizational intervention. So, in this presentation, I'm going to discuss problems that have arisen in an organization known as site operations within XYZ Manufacturing. The organizational intervention within site operations. So, I was asked to become involved in some proposed changes that senior leadership team was wanting to make. Throughout this presentation, we will call this the intervention. So as far as the current state of affairs. So the current state of affairs, the workplace situation, the proposed changes, and the goals of the intervention. Within this presentation, I will discuss all of these to include the situation within the workplace, proposed changes, and the end goals that we plan to achieve with the organizational intervention. In regards to what took place next, I will describe what brought the organization to the realization that they needed the intervention. Next, I will discuss the proposed changes of the intervention and the adjustments that we had to make mid-project. And lastly, we will have an after-action review of the intervention. I will perform an after-action review or analysis highlighting some of the key lessons that were learned throughout this entire intervention. All right, let's get down to it. So, background. So, Site Operations is an organization within XYZ Manufacturing that has recently inherited a new director. So, the leader of the operations department of XYZ Manufacturing was recently given an option to retire in February of 2018. And so, guess what? He decided to pursue that option. A bright new up and comer had been chosen to succeed him and take over the reins. When the new director entered the area, he had to hit the ground running. There was no one there to show him the ropes, and he had to learn very quickly. But one thing happened as he began to look at the metrics. He realized that nothing seemed to line up with the measurements that had been used. And the measurements that used, they were ineffective. They were part of a reason that the organization was failing. So in a nutshell, performance was on a downhill slope with no effective measures in place. What the new director realized was that change needed to be made, and it needed to be made very quickly. And so, here we go, entering into the organizational intervention. Current state of affairs. So, the current state of affairs at site operations in XYZ Manufacturing are the fact that there are no executable key performance indicators, or as we will call them, KPIs. And KPIs can be described as tangible values, which are utilized to analyze, measure, equate, and manage the overall performance of an organization. And so basically, KPIs is the heartbeat of an organization. It is the score, it's the battle rhythm that an organization goes by. If an organization doesn't have a valid KPI, they don't have a valid measurement. Therefore, they don't have valid status of where they are. And if you don't have valid status, how can you know where you come from and what you are to achieve? So, realizing that the organization had no executable key performance indicators, the proposed change was to come up with a set of 8 separate KPIs. So, we were working with the industrial engineer team, and we came up with these 8 KPIs that we determined would be key in getting this organization back on par and getting it back on task. And these KPIs aligned with everything that this organization was supposed to do. So what we did, we assumed the outcomes and the goals of the intervention. So on these, what we assumed, we developed the KPIs, and we said, you know what? These KPIs need to do these certain items. And here I'm getting ready to read these to you. So they increase performance, they boost morale, They aligned the site operations organization with the overall company vision. And this was one of the detriments of the site operations organization. The KPIs that were in place did not align with the company vision. How absurd is that? They did not align with the company vision. And finally, we wanted to incorporate a visual workplace, knowing that if it's visual, people will understand and people can see what measurements are going on around them. So that's the current state of affairs. Now, transitioning to that, leading us to this current station of affairs was how the organization was. And we'll call this the pre-intervention. So organization before the intervention. So before the intervention, the organizational effectiveness was ineffective. Assessing organizational effectiveness by the way of a very well planned out and executed investigative process is critical, improving and forming part of an organization's management strategy. And this was Martins and Coetzee as they did one of their researches on organizational effectiveness. And so it was ineffective. There was no one there who understood what the measurements were. You can ask some employees. Some employees understood where they were in the workday in regards to that work, but not all of them did. And if you don't have everybody marching to the same battle rhythm and everybody on the same vision, the organization will never make it to the common goal that they are supposed to make it to. Secondly, the organizational goals were not aligned with the company's vision, as I mentioned earlier. So there were goals within the organization, but they made no sense. They didn't align with the overall vision of the company. And that's the part of an organization. When an organization is part of a company, that organization should align to the vision of the company, doing its part for the company. Because if that organization does not align to the company's vision, then the company's vision will not come into fruition. So the proper alignment of goals, it protects an organization from unseen risk and losses. If you have proper goals in mind and you have proper goals set, you can level set at any time. You can revamp, you can back up, and you can start over, and you can do again. So again, pre-intervention, the organization was in pretty bad shape. So we're going to discuss now some of the changes that were made with the intervention. So one of the things that we did during the intervention, we interviewed the managers and the shop floor workers. There are a lot of questions coming around when myself and the industrial engineers, we were tasked with coming up with these different KPIs. So we went to start talking to the managers, just finding out how they do their day-to-day business, what they use to what metrics they use to find out if they're successful or not. We went and talked to the workers on the shop floor, and we wanted to know from them, how do you know if you're efficient in a day? How do you know if you're doing your part of what this organization needs? And you know what we found out? We found out that there were only a few that understood what they needed to get done at the end of the day. The majority of them just did what they were told to do, and that's what they did. So they did what was expected for them, right? So a lot of people normally do what's expected of them, and that's what the employees in this organization were doing. And the bad part about it is that a lot of the managers didn't know the measurements that they were supposed to meet. So they couldn't direct the employees into where they needed to go. Again, no KPIs, no proper KPIs that were being measured. So the team that included industrial engineers, management, and the shop floor workers and myself, right? So Stone, Brown, Smith, and Jacobs, 2018, they state that the best teams are comprised of everyone that represents an organization. And when we put the teams together, we put together the teams with the mindset of we need the people who actually do the work, we need the people who assign the work, and we need the people who understand how to measure the work. So that's what we did when we put everything together. Next, we had a management level set. And in this management level set, we talked with the managers, we discussed with the managers, we told them exactly what we were doing and why we needed to do it. And at first, there were some of them who were very hesitant because they just said, hey, it's another flavor of the month. We always do different things like this. But as we started to show them metrics, as we started to show them data, they started to get more interested. And as we started to show them how we could actually increase their work performance by not adding much more on them, we would actually make their work easier. They really got interested. And so they actually started to help us out. And once we got the management involved, we conducted 2 workshops. And those workshops included the team that I talked about before. Within those workshops, we talked about the KPIs and we talked about the measurements that go into the KPIs. We talked about what the KPIs meant for the employees as far as that goes. We talked about visual cues, visual keys, all of those different types of things. And after the workshop, which was a very well attended workshop, we presented our findings to the leadership. We presented our findings on what we found out would be very important, the KPIs that would be the right size KPIs that could set this organization afloat and put it back on the right path. As we talked to leadership, they shook their heads and they understood what we were talking about. But again, we're in the middle of a firestorm. And so senior leadership determined that 8 KPIs was a bit too much to start off with. Because what happened, we didn't execute properly. Then we fell at all 8. So we came to an agreement, we regrouped and we refocused, and they allowed us to focus on 2 different KPIs. And so that's what we did. We focused on 2 different KPIs. So that was a change made within the intervention. We regrouped and we focused. And currently, with those 2 KPIs, we were having visual aids that are being produced on those KPIs. The industrial engineers, they already have the numbers, they already have the math. We had already been talking with the employees, and now we have the visual aids that are being produced for those KPIs. As far as an after action review or conclusion, so pre-analysis was the bad, I call it. Communicating the vision for buy-in. This step was lacking at site operations and identified as one of the issues for the poor reception. During the step, it is crucial that leadership captures the heart and the minds of the employees who are necessary to implement the change. So we had work to do. We had to roll up our sleeves and we had to go to work. Again, no one knew the score of the game. How can you win a game if you don't understand the score? So that was the purpose of the KPIs, right? They didn't have proper KPIs to know the score. So they were playing the game. They were exercising. They were doing everything they can. I use an analogy. They were trying to get from here to California and running on a treadmill. So they were exerting energy. They were expending themselves. They were doing the things they thought right to do, but they were going nowhere. You can't get from here to California on a treadmill. You have to actually have to go in forward motion. And so that's what these KPIs were very needed for. And also, we found out that no one had surveyed the workforce. The workers were just doing the work. No one had actually stopped to ask the workforce, hey, what is good for you? How can we make this better? So we get to post-analysis after the intervention started. And the intervention's not done yet. We're into the intervention. But here's the good. So the KPIs that I talked about before, the KPIs are being developed to allow for a more efficient measurement system. So one of the KPIs is the measurement of backlog and behind schedule work. So that was one of the tent poles. This work was growing. There was no way to measure the work before. The work was growing, the backlog was growing, and no one was getting the work done. So now we have a measurement developed for the backlog. And for that, we're using mountain charts so we can show the employees their daily progress every day. Also, efficiency measurement on first pass quality. So when employees were messing up, they knew they messed up, but they didn't know how that impacted their work. They didn't know how, if you do your work the right time, how well that work would be. So what we did, we instituted first pass quality controls as visual controls. A stoplight chart, you're either red, green, or you're yellow, right? You're doing good, you made rework, or you're on your way to making rework. So we showed them those visuals, and right now I'm telling you the excitement is there within the team because they can now have a few measurements. And so while we're working out on perfecting those, we haven't tossed the other KPIs to the side. We have those in the back burners. And finally, senior leadership, they have brought into the idea of additional KPIs. Once these KPIs that we have are rolled out and they are sustained. So they see the benefit in the KPIs, but we've got to ensure that we are rolling them out the proper way. So today I've talked to you about implementing KPIs within XYZ organization. So I just thank you for your time, and I thank you for everything listened to. And here's my reference page on the reference that I've done. So I appreciate all of your time. Thank you and have a great day.